next thing I'm going to show you is something that I've been working on. I've always, since at least the 80s in my early books, but ever since, I've always been addressing the issue of ground fighting, which a lot of Wing Chun guys were kind of reluctant to look at until very recently with the craze of the MMA. But if you look back historically at my books from the 80s, you'll see that I already was addressing ground fighting and continue to. If I see something that works, whether it's in the street, in a match, in the gym, if I see a technique that works and it's not Wing Chun, I'll make it Wing Chun by reverse engineering it and seeing how I can use my Wing Chun movements to actually recreate or make that effect happen again, but in strictly a Wing Chun format. So the first technique I'm going to do is I'm going to address, again, with a tip of the hat to the MMA craze. A lot of your viewers may be MMA fighters or interested in it. So I'm going to use an MMA reference, and I'm going to show a typical Wing Chun defense in what they call the guard position, and a typical Wing Chun defense from what they call the mount position. So how do we get out of those two situations? Now the first technique, you're going to see me use a movement from the wooden dummy form where you saw me hit underneath the arms. That's called Pao Sao or Tak Sao, lifting palm. You'll see that technique. You're going to see what's called Lao Sat So in the Chung Kyu form, in between the first front kick and the second two side kicks. The way I put my foot down is called Lao Sat So. It's also seen hidden when I first open my stance. You'll see that movement in action. You'll see something called Lan Gyok or Lan leg, banister leg, which is nothing but the leg version of the Lan Sao from the Silim Tao in Chung Kyu form. You'll then see me do a push-pull motion, which is based on the Che Sao motion from the Buji form, the push-pull hand. You will also see me use a hook of my foot that's equivalent of Hyun Sao, hooking hand, but you'll see me do it with my foot. And at the end, you'll see me using Gum Sao and Chop Kyun, which is the low punch of Wing Chun, normally thought of as punching someone in the stomach, but if you're in the mounted position, is the way we would punch somebody from the mount. So all those techniques are going to be at work here in the following reversal from the guard, with a guy grabbing me by the throat and punching me in the face. So if I'm on the ground and Seifi's kneeling down, I'm in what's called the guard position. Now Seifi's going to have me by the throat with one hand and punching me in the face with the other. Now that's a situation you don't want to find yourself in. So if this guy's punching me in the face here, that's a bad position to be in. I think anyone would agree. Now, normally what I'd like to do is get myself scooted out and away using Yichi Kim Young Ma, the basic stance, but sometimes you just can't. He's already past your knees, and you can't get into that position where you can lock your legs. So, the very first thing I'm going to do is what's called Pao Sao, which I did on the wooden dummy here. Now, what I'm doing right now is trying to get myself some distance so it makes it a little harder for Seifi to hit me. Doesn't mean he can't hit me, but it'll make it a little harder. It'll also give me some breathing room, because right now I'm being choked. So when I straighten his arm like that, by lifting, it gives me a little air. Very important consideration. The next thing that I do is take that Lao Sat So, that twisted and stompy thing I showed you, and I'll put it on the side of the punch. So when he's trying to punch me, I'll put that foot into his hip, right on the side he's punching me. So now it makes it harder for him to reach me. Go ahead and throw some punches at me. See, he could still get me, but it's a little harder. Next, I'll place my leg across his waist and hook his hip using a combination of the Lan Sao principle and the Hyun Sao hook. And I'll hook my leg and grab his hip. Then I'll extend my leg out here wide, just like I do in Silim Tao when I do Hang Sao, and I'll sweep his leg out as I turn my Pao Sao to a Gum Sao press. And I'll chop his legs out from under him while turning over and putting his arm across his body and taking the mount for position to punch. So you can see that the principles of Wing Chun are at work in that technique, and every single move is a verifiable or justifiable Wing Chun motion in action. All right, so let's try that again, and I'll show it from the other angle. All right, so again, the first and most important consideration, air and space. So get yourself some air and space by using Pao Sao. Next, that punch is coming at you. Get your foot into his hip. Keep him at a distance where he can't reach you with that fist. Push him away just enough. Next, you're going to put your leg across his hip using the Lan Sao and Hyun Sao principles applied to the leg. That keeps him at bay. Keep a hold of this arm though, don't let it go. Now, you bring your leg out wide and prepare to chop. Chop. And as you chop the leg, you also reverse your grip on the hand So you use a combination of the hooking foot, pulling, the push on the elbow, and the chop of the legs, and you take him across where his arm is across his face like this. Now you can either continue to press there and punch, or you can take it here. You can also reach underneath and catch his hand there and continue to do the punishment here. Now, for you guys out there that are going to say, yeah, but I wouldn't let him chop my legs out. Yeah, because you're smart. But most guys out there aren't. If you are smart, and I go for this, and I go for this, and I go for this, and I go, and you go, ha ha ha, because you got me well trapped, then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, fine, I'll just put my foot here and push that out, and I can still get up top. So it's one of these deals where if he pushes, you pull. If he pulls, you push. Now, the last technique I'm going to show from the ground is going to be dealing with the situation that is known as the mount, or being mounted. When your opponent is mounted on top of you and he's punching you in the face, his weight is necessarily forward. So it's very easy to just buck him and get him off you. Now, there are cases, though, when you might buck him and he might not fly completely off of you. So let's get back on. So let's say that, if he's punching at me and I go for that bucking motion and he doesn't fly completely off. Well, what I did was I raised my hip and I used my knee to lift him. Now what happens there is he's now up in the air, so when I drop my hips, there's going to be a gap right here between my groin and safety's. See it? And I'll shoot my hand through there and catch whatever I can. Then I'll grab onto his arm and I'll plant my legs wide like the pole form. And what I'll then do is I'll flip him by pushing with my leg and pushing with my arm and pulling to take the top. So again, what I did was, from being mounted, I felt my opponent's weight going forward. Now, I'm not going to stand here like an idiot and let him hit me. But if he's hitting at me, I know that if I buck him at just the right time, I'm going to gain some space. And if I drop my hips quickly before he can, there's going to be a hole there. I can shoot, and if I'm really mean, I can make that a strike. You know the way you used to bounce an orange off your bicep when you were a kid? You can bounce that wham into a groin shot. Then you grab, right there. Grab his belt or his pants. If he's not wearing any pants, you shouldn't be doing this with him anyway. Now, reach over and catch the forearm with your thumb down. That's cow sao, by the way, from the Sulim Tao form. This one here is just nothing but tan sao. Now, you grab on here, you grab on here. You go with a wide stance from the pole form. That's that real wide stance you see us sitting low in. And you use that on the ground. You'll use your hips again. You'll push with this leg primarily. You'll pull with the other hand. And that you'll just basically heft him over and then take the top. So that is Wing Chun in a nutshell. There's your kick to the spine, by the way.